Hey guys, welcome to this video about 13 markers. Now if you're a GCSE student taking psychology, then this video is going to be an absolute lifesaver. I'm currently a psychology teacher, I'm also an examiner for OCR, so I'm going to be able to give you all the top tips to absolutely nail a 13 marker. So the first thing you have to know is that 13 markers are always debates. They will always ask you to argue side 1 versus side 2, opinion 1 versus opinion 2. For example, they could ask you to compare case studies with experiments, or free will versus determinism. And you know it wouldn't be a psych-based video without some sort of activity. I've got an example 13 marker on the screen here. I want you to work out what the two sides of the argument are. I'm going to give you a few seconds before I put the answer on the screen in 3, 2, 1. And the answer is that we're looking for a debate between which are better, lab studies or another type of experiment, such as field or natural. And we're actually going to stick with this example throughout this video. And so your first job when you open up that paper is to find out what the 13 marker is asking you. Work out what this little debate is, and that's got to be your opening sentence. In this essay, I will be analysing the free will determinism debate. Or in this essay, I will be discussing whether lab experiments or field experiments are better. So just to recap, step 1 of a 13 marker, work out what the debate is. Now the second thing that I need to go through with you is the structure of a 13 marker. Now many different people would teach this in a different way, so you may have heard different from your teacher and that's okay, but the way that I always go through it is that I say that we need 4 paragraphs. So we have a sentence at the start, which we've already covered, then we have 4 paragraphs, and then we have a little sentence or 2 at the end for a conclusion. And this is the structure of every single 13 marker, no matter the question. You stick to this structure, you're well on your way to getting full marks. And so a bit of advice for you is to split 13 markers in half in your mind. The first half of a 13 marker is going to be talking about the first side of your argument. The second half of your 13 marker is going to be talking about the second half of your argument. And so now that we have a good understanding of the basics, well, I think we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves because we need to reel it back to the first paragraph. Bonus tip, whenever I'm talking about paragraphs, I'm talking about PEE paragraphs. I'm hoping most of you know what these are, but if you don't, give it a Google or speak to your English teacher. These are point, evidence, explain paragraphs. It makes it really simple to write. So, paragraph 1 is what we call an AO1 paragraph. Now AO1 is description, and specifically we need to describe whatever study or theory the question is giving you, and in this case I need to describe brawn. Now ideally we only need to do this in 3 or 4 sentences max, but in this case I've gone a bit overboard and I've given you loads of detail. Always better to do more detail than too little. And notice one really important thing. I've made sure to mention the thing that it's asked about in the little quote. Specifically in this case I've mentioned lab studies. So remember, whatever debate that the question has gotten you to do, you must talk about that debate throughout in every single paragraph. You'll notice I mention it in every paragraph as we go through here. So just to summarise, your first paragraph needs to be the AO1, the description of the study or theory it gives you. Then we come on to paragraph 2. This is AO3, or evaluation. To make it really simple, we're talking about strengths and weaknesses here. Now specifically, we're talking about the strengths and weaknesses of Braun's study, but linking to lab and field experiments. The biggest mistake, and this is so important you take this away, the biggest mistake I see that students make is that they simply go on to evaluate that study. They simply go on to tell me that Braun's study has little amount of participants or something along those lines. That is completely irrelevant to the question. So you won't get credited for that even though it's right. So you must talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the fact that Braun is a lab experiment. And in this case you can see that I've written that a strength is that we're controlling extraneous variables, which is an excellent point to make. Also notice I've maintained a point, evidence, explain structure, so that way you know how to write that sentence, a point, evidence, explain, or PEE. And that nicely rounds off the first half of the essay. And now the second half of the essay is a breeze now that you know how it works. You do exactly the same as the first half, just about a different study or theory. Now you do have to be careful here because there are 2 things that can absolutely ruin your essay. Number 1 is that it must be from a different area of psychology. So for example, in this essay it's given me Braun et al. Braun et al. Is a study from memory, therefore I can't use another study from memory, in this case carve-wearing. Therefore instead I've gone for Bickman from social influence, a much better study and one that will actually get me the marks. You will be capped on your marks if you go for a study or theory that is within the same topic of psychology. And that brings me on to the second massive mistake in 13 markers, and that is that people decide to use a study and theory interchangeably. What I mean by that is that when it gives you a study such as Braun et al., you can't then bring in a theory like social learning theory or Eysenck's theory. You must talk about a study. Where it says brawn here, it could give us a theory like the multi-store model or social learning theory. If it did that, I would only be allowed to talk about theories instead. And to make this really easy for you, in the description, I've actually posted a free document that outlines all of the studies and theories, which will give you an idea of which you're allowed to talk about when. So remember, pick a study or theory that's from a different part of psychology than the one it gives you, and don't get studies and theories confused. And now that you know that, we can finish off this essay nicely. So for paragraph 3, I've gone for Bickman. This is from a different area of psychology because it's social influence instead of memory, and it's a study, which means that I can use it against brawn. Now what I've done here is simply outline the study, making sure to mention the fact that it's a field experiment, because again the question's asking about lab experiments, so I have to make sure that I'm referring to the thing that it's trying to get me to debate. What you can see here is that it's a really simple 3 or 4 sentence summary of the study. That's all you need for your third paragraph, your AO1 description of your opposing study or theory. And then finally we come on to paragraph 4, which I think you can probably guess by now is the AO3 or evaluation of the thing you've just done. So that's the strengths and weaknesses of whatever it is that you've chosen. In this case I've picked Bickman, so I'm going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of Bickman. And again, please do not forget, you are not just evaluating that study or theory, you must make sure that you are doing it within the context of whatever the question is trying to get you to debate. In this case, the debate is lab versus field, so I have to make sure that I'm telling you what a strength or weakness of a field experiment is, because Bickman is a field experiment. And then finally we come on to the conclusion. The simplest way to get yourself a mark is to just have a 1-sentence conclusion at the end that starts with the words, in conclusion, I think that blank. And then you have to go on to make a judgment. So tell me, do you think that lab experiments are better than field experiments? And if so, why? Do this in just 1 sentence and you should get yourself a little conclusion mark. That's the final AO3 mark. Now, if you take a look in the description, I've provided loads of free resources, such as a PDF of the essay that we've been using in this video. I'm also updating that all of the time. I'm updating the channel with absolutely tons of resources, such as videos about all the studies and theories, and I'm also planning on doing a walkthrough mock at some point soon, where I'll talk you through the whole paper and common misconceptions. If you're a teacher, please contact OCR and have a look at the Teach Cambridge website. Your exams office should be able to give you access to it, and although I'm not being paid by OCR to say this, there are loads of resources on there to help. And now that I've pointed both students and teachers in the direction of some free resources, it's time for me to see you guys in the next video.